Have you ever stood in front of a plant that looked like it had simply lost the will to grow? I know that feeling well. You water it, you care for it, you give it the best fertilizer you can find, and still it sits there looking tired. Old leaves turning yellow, stems losing strength, fruit barely forming. For anyone who has spent years with their hands in the soil, that sight hurts. Because gardening is never just about plants. It is about the life we are trying to protect. Now imagine being told that the answer is not sitting on the shelf of an expensive garden store, but hiding in your bathroom cabinet, costing less than a cup of coffee. Welcome back to Earthly Delights, where we look beneath the surface of the soil to separate useful garden wisdom from dangerous garden myths, and to remember the joy of growing healthy life from the ground up. I'm truly glad you're here today. Recently, the internet has been filled with one big claim. From TikTok to YouTube to Reddit, gardeners everywhere are talking about a simple $2 mixture. Some say it can trigger explosive growth, chase away pests, stop disease, and even replace regular fertilizer completely. The two ingredients are ordinary hydrogen peroxide and Epsom salt. But in real gardening, we cannot follow every trend just because it sounds exciting. Soil is alive, roots are sensitive, and every shortcut has consequences. So today, we are going to look carefully at this popular mix. Does it really help plants recover, or could it quietly damage the soil we depend on? Let's take a clear, honest walk through the science, the soil, and the deeper lesson behind this so-called $2 miracle. Let's begin with why this $2 mix has become so tempting. As gardeners, farmers, and plant lovers, we all know how expensive plant care can become. A small bottle of specialized fertilizer, a root booster, a disease spray, a bloom enhancer. Before long, the shelf is full and the bill is heavy. So when people hear that a simple bottle of 3% hydrogen peroxide and a cheap bag of Epsom salt might replace all of that, the idea feels almost impossible to ignore. That is exactly why this trend has spread so fast. Hydrogen peroxide is inexpensive and easy to find at almost any pharmacy. Epsom salt is also cheap, especially when bought in bulk. Compared with premium fertilizer formulas that can cost many times more, this mix sounds like a practical shortcut for anyone trying to grow stronger plants without spending too much money. Across online gardening groups, people share the same basic recipe again and again. 1 teaspoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide and 1 teaspoon of Epsom salt mixed into a gallon of water. Some spray it on leaves, some pour it into the root zone. Others use it on houseplants, seedlings, peppers, tomatoes, and even more demanding crops. Then come the bigger claims, that it can stop damping off disease, cure root rot overnight, push plants into explosive growth, and protect them from pests. It sounds wonderful, but after many years working with soil and plants, I can tell you this clearly. Gardening is not just about mixing ingredients and hoping for a miracle. It is a relationship with living systems. Before we trust any garden recipe, we need to understand what those ingredients actually are and what they truly do. So what are we really adding to the soil? Let's start with Epsom salt. It was named after Epsom, a town near London where this mineral was found in spring water and people have used it for centuries. But despite the word salt, it is not the same as table salt. Table salt is sodium chloride, and too much sodium can damage or even kill many plants. Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate, a mineral compound that contains magnesium and sulfur. Both magnesium and sulfur can matter in plant growth. Magnesium plays an important role in chlorophyll, the green pigment that helps plants capture sunlight. Sulfur is also part of several plant processes. So yes, Epsom salt contains nutrients, but that does not automatically mean every plant needs more of it. Now let's look at hydrogen peroxide. Chemically, it is close to water. Water is H2O, while hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. In simple terms, it is water with one extra oxygen atom. That extra oxygen makes it reactive, which is why it bubbles, breaks down, and can act as a disinfectant. Interestingly, one of its early commercial uses in the 1800s was bleaching hats. Supporters of this viral mixture sometimes claim that combining hydrogen peroxide with Epsom salt creates a powerful new super fertilizer. Some even say it forms magnesium peroxide. But in an ordinary home gardening bucket, that is not what happens. Producing magnesium peroxide industrially requires concentrated hydrogen peroxide, high heat, and controlled chemical conditions. When you mix these two ingredients at home, the Epsom salt simply dissolves into ions, while the hydrogen peroxide begins breaking down. There is no hidden magical reaction happening in the watering can. So if the mix is not creating a new fertilizer, we need to ask the more important question. What is it actually doing to the plant and the soil? The most dangerous claim around this $2 mix is that it can fully replace fertilizer. That is where many gardeners get misled, because it misunderstands the basic nutrition plants need to live, grow, flower, and produce fruit. Think of a plant a little like the human body. We cannot survive on one mineral alone. We need a complete balance of nutrients to build tissue, create energy, and function properly. Plants are the same. To complete their life cycle, they need 17 essential elements. Among the most important are the primary macronutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. These are the NPK numbers you see printed on every fertilizer label. Nitrogen supports leafy growth and many internal plant processes. Phosphorus is important for root development, energy transfer, flowering, and fruiting. Potassium helps regulate water movement, stress resistance, and overall plant strength. Plants use these nutrients in large amounts, especially when they are growing heavily or producing crops. Now look closely at the $2 mix. Does hydrogen peroxide provide nitrogen? No. Phosphorus? No. Potassium? No. Epsom salt has an NPK value of 0 to 0. Hydrogen peroxide provides no plant nutrients at all. So if you stop using balanced fertilizer and replace it with only this mixture, your plants may slowly move into nutrient starvation, even if they look temporarily stimulated at first. This is why miracle claims are so dangerous in gardening. A plant can only perform well when its foundation is supported. Without the core macronutrients, no spray, no fizzing liquid, and no trendy internet recipe can truly replace proper plant nutrition. But you may be wondering, don't plants actually need magnesium and sulfur? Yes, they absolutely do. These are important secondary nutrients, and magnesium is especially valuable because it sits at the center of every chlorophyll molecule. Without enough magnesium, a plant cannot properly capture sunlight and turn that light into energy. When soil is truly low in magnesium, Epsom salt can give plants a quick and useful boost. This kind of deficiency is more common in sandy soils, heavily leached soils, or soils that are very acidic. In that situation, Epsom salt is not a miracle, but it can be a practical correction when used with understanding. The problem is that many garden soils already contain enough magnesium and sulfur. When you add more to soil that is not deficient, you are not helping the plant. You may actually be creating a new problem. Think of it like putting fuel into a vehicle. If the tank is empty, fuel gets you moving. But if the tank is already full, pouring in more does not make the engine stronger. It spills over, creates a mess, and can cause damage. That is exactly where Epsom salt becomes a trap. Too much magnesium in healthy soil can interfere with the plant's ability to take up other nutrients, especially calcium. And calcium is not optional. It plays a major role in cell structure, strong growth, and healthy fruit development. Have you ever grown a beautiful tomato, only to find the bottom turning black, sunken, and rotten? That is blossom end rot. Many gardeners try to fix it by adding Epsom salt, thinking the plant needs a boost. But blossom end rot is connected to poor calcium availability or movement in the plant. By adding more magnesium, you may actually compete with calcium uptake and make the problem worse. This is why balance matters so much in soil care. Plants do not need random feeding. They need the right nutrient, in the right amount, at the right time. When we force feed the soil without knowing what it lacks, we disturb the quiet balance that healthy roots depend on. Now let's talk about the more dramatic ingredient in this mix: hydrogen peroxide. When hydrogen peroxide touches soil, it begins to break down and release reactive oxygen. That is why you see bubbling and fizzing. It oxidizes organic matter and can kill living organisms on contact. In certain emergencies, that reaction can be useful. If soil is waterlogged, compacted, and starved of oxygen, plant roots begin to suffocate. In those wet, airless conditions, root rot organisms such as Pythium and Fusarium can spread quickly. A carefully targeted use of diluted hydrogen peroxide may help knock back some pathogens and give suffocating roots a short pulse of oxygen. But here is the paradox. Hydrogen peroxide does not choose sides. It is a non-selective killer. It cannot tell the difference between a harmful fungus and the beneficial fungi and microbes that help your plant survive. Healthy soil is not just dirt. It is a living underground system filled with bacteria, fungi, and other organisms working around the roots. Beneficial mycorrhizal fungi can act almost like an extension of the root system, helping plants take up water and nutrients, especially phosphorus. These microbes are part of the natural fertility engine of the soil. So when someone pours hydrogen peroxide into the soil every week just because an online video recommended it, they may be damaging that living system. Instead of supporting the soil food web, they are oxidizing it. They reduce microbial diversity, interrupt natural nutrient cycling, and make the plant more dependent on repeated outside treatments. There is also another concern. If tap water is heavily chlorinated and the pH is above 7.0, peroxide may react in ways that create small amounts of harsh compounds, including hydrochloric acid. That can irritate delicate root hairs, damage tender tissues, and weaken the protective surface of leaves, making plants more vulnerable to drying, stress, and disease. So should we throw away hydrogen peroxide and Epsom salt completely? No. The goal is not to fear these products. The goal is to stop treating them like universal miracle cures and start using them as specific tools for specific problems. Hydrogen peroxide can be useful as a surface disinfectant. It can help clean pruning shears, pots, seed trays, and propagation equipment, especially when you are trying to reduce the spread of disease. A simple dilution of 1 part 3% hydrogen peroxide to 4 parts water can be used to soak or wipe tools and containers before reuse. For seeds that are prone to fungal problems, a weak peroxide soak before planting may help reduce surface pathogens and support cleaner germination. And if you have a confirmed, serious case of root rot, hydrogen peroxide may be used as an emergency step. In that case, the plant should be removed from the pot, dead roots trimmed away, and a diluted peroxide solution used carefully before repotting into fresh, well-draining soil. Epsom salt should be handled the same way, only when there is a reason. Use it when you have real evidence of magnesium deficiency. A common sign is yellowing between the veins of older leaves while the veins remain green. Even then, a soil test is the smarter guide. If the deficiency is confirmed, a foliar spray of 1 tablespoon of Epsom salt per gallon of water, applied on a cool, cloudy day, can help heavy feeders such as peppers and roses recover more effectively. The lesson is simple. Use these products like scalpels, not broadswords. A scalpel is precise. It solves a specific problem. A broadsword swings at everything and can cause damage you never intended. As we come to the end of this journey, I want to leave you with one simple question. Why do we garden? Do we garden only to beat the system, to find the cheapest shortcut, the fastest trick, the next viral recipe that promises a bigger harvest overnight? Or do we garden because we want to understand the living earth beneath our feet and the quiet, unseen relationships that keep our plants alive? This $2 mixture tells us something important about the world we live in. We are always being offered a magic bullet. 1 bottle, 1 spoonful, 1 secret solution. But soil does not work that way. Soil does not rush. It is built through time, through decaying leaves, compost, earthworms, fungi, bacteria, moisture, air, minerals, and roots, all working together in ways we can barely see. When we pour random mixtures into the garden without understanding what they do, we are not just risking $2. We are ignoring the language of the soil. We are treating a living system as if it were an empty sponge that only needs to be filled with whatever trend the internet recommends. The real lesson here is not that hydrogen peroxide and Epsom salt are evil. The lesson is that we must become better observers. Watch the leaves. Look at the new growth. Notice the soil texture, drainage, color, smell, and moisture. Test the soil when something does not make sense. Feed the garden with compost, mulch, organic matter, and balanced nutrition that supports the soil microbiome instead of constantly disturbing it. Good gardening is not about perfection. It is about partnership. It is knowing when to step in with the right tool, and just as importantly, knowing when to step back and let nature continue the work she has been doing for millions of years. So the next time you see a video promising one miracle cure for every garden problem, pause for a moment. Remember the science. Remember NPK. Remember the living microbial world around every healthy root. Keep Epsom salt for the rare moments when magnesium is truly lacking. Keep hydrogen peroxide for cleaning tools, trays, and pots, or for very specific emergency uses. But do not let a cheap shortcut replace careful observation, good soil care, and balanced feeding. Your garden is more complex, more intelligent, and more alive than any viral recipe can explain in a few seconds. Thank you for spending this time with me on Earthly Delights. If this changed the way you think about soil, give this video a thumbs up, share it with another gardener who needs to hear it, and subscribe so we can keep learning and growing together. Until next time, keep your hands dirty, keep your mind curious, and always respect the earth. Happy gardening!